Olive Garden employees who have had to cut somebody off from unlimited breadsticks and salad? What happened? When I was a flight attendant, I had a love-hate relationship with first class. On one hand, it was quieter, more comfortable, and usually less stressful than economy. On the other hand, people were grumpy, very grumpy. They paid a lot for the tickets and expected luxury service, even when we were limited by the food we could serve on a night flight. Most of the time, first-class passengers were asleep, which meant we didn't serve much anyway. But when someone was awake and hungry, it became an exercise in diplomacy. One night, I was working a red-eye from New York to Los Angeles. The cabin lights were dimmed for the long haul. The hum of the engines made the plane feel like a gentle rocking cradle, and most of the first-class passengers were asleep. I had just finished a beverage run in economy when I checked the first-class cabin. Only one gentleman was awake, sitting near the window, looking mildly annoyed as he flipped through the in-flight magazine. I grabbed the food cart, which had the night's limited first-class meal. That night, the options were sad, really sad. The airline catered simple pasta dishes for night flights, expensive to load, and most people slept through them. Tonight, it was pesto pasta with a soft breadstick that had been sitting under the heat lamp too long. It wasn't Olive Garden quality, that's for sure. I walked down the aisle of first class and sat up at the gentleman's seat. "Sir, would you like the meal tonight?" I asked politely, knowing I was about to hand him a plate that could spark complaints. He sighed loudly and gestured for me to go ahead. I plated the pasta and added the breadstick. I put the tray on his fold-down table and stepped back, hoping he wouldn't notice how sad the dish really was. He picked up his fork, poked at the pasta, and grimaced. "What is this?" he asked in a tone that could freeze water. "Is this Olive Garden?" Without thinking, a weird impulse hit me. I leaned slightly forward, adopted a theatrical Italian accent, and said, "When you're here, you're family." He froze for a second, fork suspended midair. I expected an eye roll or a huff. Instead, he looked at me and let out a quiet, almost imperceptible chuckle, then just a smirk. It was brief but genuine. Not the smug smirk of a grumpy rich man, but the one of someone caught off guard and amused despite themselves. I walked back to the cart, trying not to grin. A few rows behind me, one of the other flight attendants, Lisa, peeked at me. "What did you just say?" she whispered. I shrugged. "I have no idea. It just came out." Lisa laughed quietly and shook her head. "You're going to get written up for that one day." I didn't care. The guy ate his pasta, and every few minutes I'd pass by to make sure he had water or anything else he needed. He was quieter after that. The tension in his posture softened, and by the time I offered a second breadstick, he actually smiled at me. A real smile. That night, I kept checking on him whenever I could. He didn't order a second tray, didn't ask for anything else, just sat there and ate his food with that small, contented grin. I felt a little victorious, even though it was silly. I had turned a grumpy, potentially miserable meal into something almost pleasant. For 15 minutes at least, I was his Olive Garden, and he was my family. By the time we started our descent into Los Angeles, the cabin was quiet again. Most passengers were still asleep, and the lights flickered on dimly to get ready for landing. I packed up the cart, stowed the trays, and checked first class one last time. The gentleman had leaned back in his seat, reading the magazine again, looking calm, almost peaceful. He gave me a small nod as I walked by, a silent acknowledgement that somehow, the night had been redeemed. Even now, years later, that moment sticks with me. Flight attendants deal with grumpy passengers all the time, but there's something satisfying about turning one grumpy man's night into a little bit of amusement and comfort. It wasn't about the food, the tray, or even the airline. It was about the human connection, about improvising a little kindness in a situation that could have been ordinary and cold. I still remember the smirk, that brief, quiet smile he gave me after my ridiculous line. It's one of my proudest moments as a flight attendant. One of those memories that reminds me why I stayed in the job for as long as I did, despite the long hours, cramped seats, and grumpy travelers. When you think about it, sometimes it isn't the luxurious service, the perfectly plated meals, or the long list of in-flight amenities that matter most. It's the little moments where someone feels seen, understood, or just a tiny bit happier than before. And on that red eye, with a sad tray of pesto pasta and a limp breadstick, I made one man's night a little brighter, and that was worth everything.